came here on a student visa. He's paid by a terrorist organization that beheads babies.
What evidence do you have of
beheads babies?
Wait.
I have evidence.
So I'm sorry, just to be clear, you're alleging that he's paid by
He's a
who?
paid protester.
By who?
Well, I didn't ask my intelligence division exactly who paid for him, but he's being paid by. He's being paid.
That's a pretty explosive allegation. Who is he being paid by?
Yeah, who is he being paid by? And who are we talking about? We're talking about Mahmoud Khalil, who is the graduate student from Colombia, a Palestinian protester who led some of the protests that took place on that campus. The Trump administration decided to arrest him. And despite the fact that he has a green card, which would require a judge to weigh in to adjudicate whether or not that green card should be revoked, the Trump administration announced that they would be revoking his green card unilaterally. But is that even allowed? We're gonna get back to that question in just a minute. But first, I wanna just hear more from Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, who has the audacity to accuse someone of being funded by terrorist groups without providing a damn shred of evidence. And you're about to get a taste of that right now. Here's more of what he had to say.
Who is he being paid by?
Can I ask you a question?
No, you said you had evidence. Who is he being paid by?
He's being paid by organizations that are anti-American, that are engaged in nefarious activities. I don't ask my intelligence division to give me.
Then don't come on national TV and say on things. Don't come on national TV.
Do you know who he's being paid by?
I don't, and I'm not alleging that he's being paid.
Are you okay with what he's doing?
I'm not alleging he's being paid by because I don't know.
Are you okay with anti-Semitism?
What an absolute clown. No one's okay with anti-Semitism, to answer your question, you absolute monster of a person. You can't go on national television and declare that someone is being funded by terrorist groups without a shred of evidence to reinforce the garbage you're spewing on CNN. And I commend that panel for holding his feet to the fire here, because again, we are waiting to see any evidence that Mahmoud Khalil did anything wrong, anything harassing toward Jewish students at Columbia, any type of, by the way, even hate speech is protected by the First Amendment, but there isn't even any evidence of him engaging in hate speech. So Khalil's arrest is the latest escalation by the Trump administration and what he calls the first arrest of many to come to crack down on pro-Palestinian demonstrations on college campuses, and comes days after he vowed to deport foreign students and imprison agitators involved in illegal protests. Now, look, this is rich coming from the right, especially when you consider the fact that the right wing, made a big to-do about conservative speakers and conservative guests being, chased out of college campuses, which I agreed with them was wrong. You should allow the freedom of expression, especially on college campuses. Like, what are you going to college for? To hear opinions that you agree with? That's what adulthood is for. That's what you get to do when you're an adult and you get to live in your little filter bubble and hear all the opinions you already agree with. But at least have a little bit of critical thinking experience on a college campus where you're gonna hear different ideas. And that's different. A peaceful protest, obviously, very different from harassing students, from blocking Jewish students from being able to move about the campus. There were examples of that. And when those situations occur, the individuals participating in that behavior should be punished, the individuals. But I don't believe for a second that this is really about anti-Semitism. Because if it was really about anti-Semitism and valuing the freedom of peaceful expression and protest and speech, well, then you would go after the people who are causing problems. You wouldn't shut down, these student protesters and make a point to send threatening letters to all of these other universities, letting them know, hey, the education department's gonna come after you if you don't immediately squash these pro-Palestinian protests. It's insane, it really is. Because the very people who make a big deal about DEI, who make a big deal about certain protections for certain minorities or vulnerable groups of people, all of a sudden have no problem trampling over the First Amendment rights of students who are doing nothing wrong, who are not harassing anyone, who are not causing any acts of violence. They're going after them. For what? On behalf of whom? I think we all know. And it's pretty gross to, again, go on national television and accuse someone without any evidence of taking money from terrorist groups to do these protests, because there's no evidence of that. But there is evidence that a major PR firm for the Democratic Party just had to register as a foreign agent because it turns out that they have close ties to Israel. So if you want to talk about where the funding's going, let's talk about this. So the firm is called SKDK. It was founded in 2004. SKDK, according to Sludge, just informed the Department of Justice that last month it began work to shape US policy and public perception on behalf of Israel. Nice, okay. So that's according to FARA filings. FARA, if you're not familiar, stands for Foreign Agents Registration Act. Look, I gotta at least give them credit for doing the bare minimum and registering as foreign agents, because a lot of politicians have gotten in trouble for failing to do so. You know, some military generals who were in Trump's first term got in some trouble for failing to do so. But SKDK has numerous ties to establishment figures within the Democratic Party. For instance, it was co-founded by Anita Dunn, a former senior advisor to Joe Biden. Justin Goodman, an executive vice president at SKDK since 2002, was Senator Chuck Schumer's communications director for almost a decade. And SKDK partnered by the name of Hillary Rosen, campaigned as a surrogate for both Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and the list goes on. So yeah, there's definitely foreign influence and foreign money flying around. But let's actually provide the receipts. And that's exactly what the reporters over at Sludge, specifically Donald Shaw, did in this incredible report. So what exactly is SKDK doing? Well, since mid-February, SKDK has conducted outreach for Israel to dozens of media outlets, including NPR, Axios, 60 Minutes, MSNBC, Fox News, The Daily Caller, PBS NewsHour, and The Lead with Jake Tapper. The filings also indicate that SKDK has conducted outreach to Elon Musk's X. Now, during the 2024 elections, according to this report, SKDK earned more than $80 million from its political work, or for its political work for Democrats and pro-Israel super PACs, and that's according to Open Secret. So you want to talk about money? Let's talk about the money that's flowing into the United States to have political influence over our media, over our general public in regard to the ongoing war on Gaza, the ongoing occupation and war on Palestinians in the West Bank. But this story, you're not gonna hear it pretty much anywhere else. If you read Sludge, you'll read it there. You'll hear me talking about it. But other than that, you're not gonna hear a single politician pull their hair out, scream at the top of their lungs about how foreign money is influencing what's happening, on domestic soil. It's wild. It's wild. Here are the receipts. Let me give you more. So it's a large PR firm, okay? And its clients really do include some big name figures. So for instance, you have Senator Ruben Gallego, a Democrat from Arizona. They worked on his campaign. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, also known as AIPAC, they've done work for them. The Super PAC, United Democracy Project, Future Forward's Super PAC, and the PAC affiliate of the nonprofit Zionist movement, which that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, right? Now, SKDK also operates the October 7th Project. What's that? So that's a communications operation which was established by AIPAC, the Anti-Defamation League. It was also the Jewish Federation of North America is involved, and other pro-Israel groups. The project was announced in December of 2023 as a centralized communications operation to promote continued US bipartisan support for Israel, push for accurate, complete coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, and a stronger focus on October 7th victims. Never mind the tens of thousands of women, children, elderly Palestinians who have been slaughtered, whose remains are still under the rubble in Gaza in many cases. I mean, Israel just announced that they're cutting off electricity entirely to Gaza. Gee, I wonder why they would want to do that. And look, you can have all of the PR firms you want, Israel. You can, go ahead. But you're never going to be able to stop the shocking images that continue to come out of Gaza. You're not going to be able to stop the reports of the blockade of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. You're not going to stop the reports of all the children who, if they're lucky enough to still be alive after the aerial bombardments, after maybe losing a limb or two, they'll probably die of starvation because of that humanitarian aid blockade. So look, PR firms might be able to help someone's image or a country's image a little bit. But if you're carrying out atrocities, there isn't a PR firm in the world that's going to provide cover for that, or at least launder the reputation of the government that's carrying out those atrocities. I don't think there's a single PR firm that can launder the reputation of Hamas, for instance, and what they did on October 7th. But what we've seen from the Israeli government and the IDF is sustained, persistent acts of war, violence, atrocities against civilians. It's been going on for well over a year now. So let's get back to Khalil, shall we? Because there's more to talk about there. So as for an update on Khalil, after we covered the story yesterday, a federal judge in New York stepped in and blocked the Trump administration from deporting him. Now, since Khalil was a green card holder, as I've mentioned before, the revocation of his green card really does depend on a judge. A judge needs to adjudicate that. So that is why the judge in his ruling said to preserve the court's jurisdiction pending a ruling on the petition, petitioner shall not be removed from the United States unless and until the court orders otherwise. Khalil, by the way, is currently being held at a detention facility in Louisiana. Yesterday, when we shared this story with you, we had mentioned that authorities had told his wife, who's an American citizen, 8 months pregnant, that he was being detained in New Jersey. At that point, his wife, along with his lawyer, go to that detention facility in New Jersey, and they're told, oh, he's not here. So for a while, no one even knew where Khalil was being detained. But now it's become clear that he's specifically at that detention facility in Jena, Louisiana. His lawyers asked the court to issue an order reversing his transfer to Louisiana. Because they're arguing, and I think this is a good argument, that this is hampering his access to counsel and also to access to his family. And according to court filings, the night before Khalil was arrested, he actually reached out. This is so sad. He reached out to Columbia's interim university president, her name is Katrina Armstrong, to ask her for help, because he was dealing with sustained harassment campaigns. He was being doxxed. He was worried about his safety, his wife's safety. He sent an email to her. In the email, Khalil said people were falsely labeling him a terrorist threat and calling for his deportation. Yeah, it's kind of sad when your own federal government is engaging in those smear tactics against someone who, if he's engaged in terrorism, if he's a terrorist threat, why haven't we seen the goods? Why haven't we seen any evidence of that? One of the funniest things that happened during the White House press conference today was, the press secretary was asked about the evidence, and she's like, he was passing out flyers. And those flyers were real bad, okay? They were real bad. They had some nasty stuff on them. They were so nasty that I didn't want to show you guys. So I didn't bring them with me to provide the evidence. Sure, okay. Now, it appears that what the Trump administration is kind of leaning on to justify the arrest and deportation of Khalil is the Immigration and Nationality Act. So let's get into that. So the Immigration and Nationality Act states an alien whose presence or activities in the United States the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable. The term alien refers to anyone who isn't a citizen or national of the United States. So it really does appear that this is what Trump is going to use, or at least the administration is going to use to justify Khalil's deportation. So that provision of the law was used as grounds to detain Khalil, a judge now has to decide whether or not there's any merit to that claim and whether or not Khalil does in fact need to have his green card revoked and whether or not he should be deported. So we're gonna wait and see. The judge's ruling essentially blocks his deportation until a federal judge can weigh in on whether it makes sense to take away his green card and deport him. But you're not seeing any remorse from the Trump administration, and I'm honestly not surprised by that at all. I really do think that Trump's been compromised by pro-Israeli campaign cash. I mean, not only from Miriam Adelson, I think he's surrounded by pro-Israel zealots who will literally trample on the rights of Americans, including our free speech rights, in order to avoid hurting the feelings of Israeli supporters here in the States and, of course, the Israeli government.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.